What would you do if you had nothing? No money, no job, no place to sleep that felt like home, and a dream so big that everyone around you told you it was embarrassing to even say out loud. What would you do if you walked into room after room again and again and the answer was always the same? No, you are not good enough. You are not what we are looking for. Go home. Most people would stop, and nobody would blame them for it. But there was one man who didn't stop, who kept walking through those doors long after every reason to keep going had disappeared. This is his story, and I think, somewhere inside it, you will find a piece of your own. His name was Sylvester Stallone, and in 1975, he was 29 years old and almost completely invisible to the world. He had grown up with very little. As a child, a medical complication during his birth had partially paralyzed the left side of his face, leaving him with a drooping lip, a slurred way of speaking, and a look that people sometimes mistook for arrogance or stupidity. Neither was true, but the world rarely waits to understand what it doesn't recognize. He was sent from school to school. He was told he was slow. He was told he would not amount to much. But inside that boy, and later inside that young man sitting in that tiny apartment in New York, there was a voice that refused to agree with any of it. He wanted to act. He wanted to write. He wanted to create something that would make people feel less alone. The world, however, had a very different opinion. He began going to auditions, one after another, week after week. Casting directors looked at his drooping face, listened to his slow, heavy voice, and said no, over and over and over again. Some were polite, some were not. One told him, very directly, "You might want to consider a different career. Acting is not for everyone." He went home, he sat in that small apartment, and he kept writing. By late 1975, things had become desperate. Stallone had almost no money left. He could not pay rent. There were days when he could not afford to eat properly. He and his wife were surviving on almost nothing. And the rejection letters, the closed doors, the turned backs, had piled up into the hundreds. At his lowest point, he made a decision that broke something inside him. He sold his dog. His dog, the one companion that had stayed with him through everything. The one living creature that had never looked at his face and seen a reason to walk away. He sold him to a stranger outside a convenience store for $25 because he needed to eat. He stood on that street corner and watched his dog disappear around the corner, and he made himself a promise that one day, when things were different, he would find him again. 3 days later, he watched a boxing match on television that would change everything. The fight was between Muhammad Ali and Chuck Wepner. Ali was the champion. Wepner was nobody, a club fighter, a man who had no business being in the same ring. And yet, Wepner lasted 15 rounds. He was knocked down. He got back up. He was knocked down again. He got back up again. He never stopped. He never quit. He lost on points, but he never, not for a single moment, gave up. Stallone went home, and for the next 3.5 days, he barely slept. He wrote and rewrote and crossed out and started again. He was on fire. When he finally put down his pen, he had a complete screenplay in his hands. He called it Rocky. It was the story of a nobody, a man from nowhere, a man the whole world had written off, who got one chance, just one, and gave everything he had to it. It was, in many ways, his own story. He took the screenplay to producers, and something unexpected happened. They loved it. They were ready to buy it immediately. They offered him $20,000. In 1975, to a man who had just sold his dog for $25, that was a fortune. There was just one condition. He could not play Rocky. They wanted a real star. Ryan O'Neal, James Caan, Burt Reynolds. Any one of them would do. Just not the man who wrote it. Not the man with the drooping face and the slow voice and the 0 credits. The offer went up, $20,000, then $100,000, then $250,000. And each time, he said no. His wife begged him to take the money. Friends told him he was throwing away the opportunity of a lifetime. Every logical voice in his life said, "Take the money. Be realistic. You are not a movie star." But Stallone had written Rocky from the deepest, most honest part of himself. And he knew if he sold the soul of the story now for money, he would never forgive himself. He walked away from $250,000. They eventually agreed Stallone would play Rocky. The budget was slashed to just $1 million, and they had to shoot the entire film in 28 days. They filmed on real streets, with a skeleton crew, with almost no money. But every single person on that set knew they were making something real. Rocky was released in November 1976. It earned over $225 million worldwide. It won 3 Academy Awards, including Best Picture. It launched one of the most beloved film franchises in history. And Sylvester Stallone became one of the most recognizable faces on Earth. The same face that hundreds of casting directors had turned away. And 3 weeks after Rocky opened, he went back. He had remembered exactly where he sold his dog. He waited outside that same spot for 3 days. He found him. He bought his dog back for $15,000. The dog's name was Butkus, and he appeared in Rocky. Here is what I take from Sylvester Stallone's story. We live in a world that is very good at telling us who we are not. Not talented enough, not attractive enough, not the right type, not what they are looking for. And the hardest thing in the world, harder than any physical challenge, harder than any exam or competition, is to hear that again and again and again, and still believe in the thing you are carrying. Stallone didn't succeed because he was the most talented. He succeeded because he refused to let other people's opinion of him become his opinion of himself. The world said no 1,500 times, and 1,500 times, he decided that was not the final answer. Whatever you are carrying right now, whatever dream people have told you is too big, too unrealistic, too much for someone like you, I want you to remember one thing. Rocky was written by a man who had just sold his dog for $25, and it won Best Picture at the Academy Awards. Don't stop. If this story gave you something tonight, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who is thinking about giving up. I will see you in the next story.